and I'm going to present you FastLive Reload. FastLive Reload, it's an application that allows you to reload your browser as you edit your code without the need to actually go into the browser and press refresh. And it's good for a number of reasons because you can, for example, edit in multiple browsers and you can run a bunch of programs when stuff changes in various folders and other cool stuff, which I'm going to show you in a second. So the easiest thing which you can immediately start doing with FastLive Reload is you can just start and serve a current folder and make it available um, for editing with Live Reload. So for example, in here I have just a simple page which basically has nothing but just test2 in it. What I can do is I can just run FastLive Reload without any parameters whatsoever, and this will serve the current folder on port 9000, and it will also create a notification server which allows my browser which connect to this 9000 port to be notified when changes occur and reload. This will also automatically inject a script whenever accessing HTML files, so they will be reloaded automatically without plugins. So for example, if you go in here, we can see, okay, we're having test2, and if we're editing this file, oops, vim test2, oops, so maybe it's index 4, my bad, we can actually test changed. And the moment we save it, automatically Live Reload, it's gonna reload the text in here. And yeah, another thing we can do is we can also serve files without reloading. So for example, we can start the server without the client notifications, and this will just look like a regular static content server. This will not inject the script anymore. So when we edit it, test changed again, and save it, well, surprisingly enough, nothing happened. If we press refresh, then indeed the content was changed. So this is, if we run it with NC, like we see in here, it will just behave like a regular static HTTP server. You would run like Python -m simple HTTP server or something. Now, another thing which is pretty cool is we can actually serve remote sites and reloading if local files change. So what I mean by that is we can for example serve I'm going to serve a virtual machine. So FastLive Reload minus serve HTTP 192.168.0.14. This is just my pre-production for my blog, and the moment we do that, if we access the page on the port 9000, we see that the actual content is going to be fetched proxied from this other website. So for example, if we actually open it for proof, we can see that this is the other the actual website which is being proxied on port 9000. And the reason for that, it's the same. If we change in here something, then we notice that the page reloads. Now you might wonder, why is this a good thing, right? Well, it can be a good thing if you're editing, for example, PHP, and you're changing your PHP files, and yet you want the browser to reload. So since you cannot serve PHP content straight from FastLive Reload, you will have an HTTP server which parses somehow that PHP, and whenever the PHP files change, FastLive Reload will see that the files changed and tell the browser, hey, you know what, you should refresh, and the PHP server will do the actual rendering. Now again, I can still disable the notification server, and then it will just behave like a regular proxy. To be honest, that's far less interesting, but yeah, it still does that. And when we change then amazingly enough, nothing happens. Okay, another thing where I'm using this application is when I actually don't serve anything. So there is this scenario, for example, where I'm changing a dot file, graph with dot. This is just a file where you generate graphs. I think it's called GraphWiz. And what I want is I want to, whenever the dot files change, just to generate the PNG, and that's it. I don't actually want to serve any content because it makes no sense. You can also do that. I'm just going to show it for demo purposes. You can run it with -o, which means offline. And then you can execute, let's say it would be dot, wherever, foo. That could be like just run dot with the foo file or wherever. And this shows you now what it will do. It will just it will execute the command .foo whenever files in the current folder change. You can also be more specific, so you can say, you know what, whenever files such as index.html change, then execute .index.html. So now only when this file changes, we're probably going to get an error because there is no blah. I don't have it installed. But the idea is, again, we can actually execute commands when files change. And yeah, basically this is just a watcher which executes commands when files change. But the cool part starts now. The idea is when you have a complex setup is you will have multiple folders with different semantics. What it means is you have different content in those folders, and it needs to be handled differently. And you can do that with FastLive Reload. What you can actually do is you can say, you know what, for the CSS files, I want to run a CSS minification program. And for JavaScript files, I want to run not only a minification, but also a concat. These are different folders, and I want to run different commands for these. And you can have multiple folders. For example, I want to have CSS and external CSS and I don't know what other CSS, and run this CSS processing. And if I have multiple JavaScript folders, I want to run these multiple JavaScript commands. These are called execution chains. And in FastLive Reload, it's super simple to express them. The idea is you always start with a list of folders which you want to be monitored, followed by a list of execution commands. So for example, if I want to do the CSS part, let's say whenever files in CSS change, I want to execute minify CSS. I'm going to execute it with dry run because I don't have none of these folders and I don't even have the minify CSS command. And this will just show us. Okay, I have a bug which I have to fix, but what this issue happens right now, I'm just going to explain it so you don't freak out. In production, it doesn't mean anything. When you monitor one file, the watcher, you have to put it on the folder. So because this is done automatically for you. So if you monitor only one file, automatically the watcher will be for the folder, and only if that file changed, your commands will be executed. But the problem becomes now, but I actually have to check if the file is a folder or a file to know where to put the watcher. So I'm just going to make an empty CSS folder. In reality, you will have this file and you will have this folder, so it shouldn't matter. And you will see that it should notify the changes for clients on port 9001, should serve the content from CSS on port 9000 because it's the only folder automatically. I assume you also want to serve it. But you can also do either no serve and then nothing gets served, either serve the current folder. And whenever files in CSS change, minify CSS will be executed. Let's make again the empty folder JavaScript. So we want now to create another execution chain, which will be after the first execution chain, we just add another folder. Let's say JS and external JS. I've added two folders, I'm sorry. So I'm adding two folders and I'm going to execute still only one command, which is going to be, again, minify JavaScript. So I'm going to execute minify JS. Okay, so we're seeing now we're executing in case GS and external GS would be files in GS or external GS will be changed, we will run minify GS. But we can also add multiple commands. So we can add in the first execution chain, we can add also ls, and we can add, let's say, grunt sync, and in the second execution chain we can add in the beginning another ls. So we notice now, okay, if files in CSS change, we will run minify CSS ls grunt sync and then notify the browser. Or if files in GS or external GS change, we will run ls and minify GS and then notify the browser. If we deem important that we don't notify the browser for an execution chain, we can just mark it as do not notify. I think it's NI. Nope, it's NN. This is in the help. I don't memorize them by heart, and I will show you on how I'm actually using it in production immediately. And if files will change in CSS, this will not trigger a refresh in the browser. This is usually more important if I will have to do, for example, a network copy, or I'm creating an archive or something, and I don't want to actually run the browser refresh because there is no change for the browser anyway. So I will show you now an actual project that I'm using it, but not before I'm going to explain you the parallel execution, which is the next great thing about FastLive Reload. The big problem with FastLive Reload, or not FastLive Reload itself, but with other live reload programs, is if you monitor a special syntax, like let's say SAS files, or if you monitor, for example, TypeScript, they usually do a full run of the TypeScript compilation again. So in our case, it would be if the TypeScript folder changes, we just run TypeScript compilation. Now this is a bad idea because it's very time consuming and you don't get live reloading anymore. Both programs like SAS, for example, Compass, which I'm using, or TypeScript, they have their own watchers, which are super fast. And I'm going to show it in a second how fast they are. And wouldn't it be nicer if our flow would integrate with those external watchers? So FastLive Reload has this idea of parallel executions. These are programs which will be started in parallel with FastLive Reload and will be shut down when FastLive Reload goes down. So for example, in here, we could also run in parallel. So we're going to execute in parallel, let's say TypeScript, watch, and wherever, some file. Okay, and you see this will run on startup and then kill on shutdown TypeScript watch. Okay, so these are like the two differentiating factors in FastLive Reload, which are not present in any other live reload, and they allow you to actually monitor wherever you want and build your build flow in it, and to have it reloading regardless of what you're changing. Because you can integrate external programs, external watchers with parallel executions, and you can integrate different building flows for different kind of resources with execution chains. So this is an actual project which I developed, which is a Joomla theme for my website. If you remember, when we were serving the remote machine, the website was actually shown from my blog. So for example, where was it? Actually, the thing is, how I'm running it in reality is I have a script which will just start up the whole thing for me. And this one will start executing in parallel Compass Watch. It will start proxying the virtual machine. It will run grunt sync whenever files in source change without notifying the client. The reason is grunt sync will actually copy the files to a network mounted share, which is basically this one, and this one will trigger the actual notification. We can actually run it also with a dry run. So let's put a -n to show what it should do. I've made a great effort into writing down what should happen. So you can first build your command with dry runs and then actually execute it. So if I will just run this one, from this moment on, whenever I will change files in my project, so let's edit this one. For example, I'm going to go with a drastic change of changing, let's say, the color of the links. The whole theme is derived from the color of the links. So let's make it, let's say, just red. Automatically, these whole steps happened in here. We had compass, monitor for changes. Where was it? 1 second, let me check. Okay, in here, compass change occurred, grunt sync, blah blah. Okay, in here, the compass saw that the variables were changed. This compiled the file which was in source. Then grunt sync was executed, and this one copied the file on the remotely mounted share. And when this happened, the reload was triggered because files changed into this location. Okay, so this is really cool because how I actually develop it in reality is I have several browsers, and I can actually I use them on a separate screen, and whenever I do changes on my main screen, I immediately see them propagated across multiple browsers, multiple resolutions, so on and so forth. And I can, for example, in here, I can actually check both my mobile and my desktop appearance for the website. So let's change it one last time to blue and see how it looks. And the thing is, how all this happens is having even a virtual machine. It's not even the same machine because I want to have the same environment as in production, which is CentOS and whatnot, while I'm using for development Ubuntu. And I think it's a great application, and to be honest, I think you'll enjoy it. I surely hope you will use it and create amazing things. And if you have any issues, feel free to report them on the GitHub page. There is a page in here. There is no open issue right now. I'm generally trying to fix all the issues, which weren't many so far. I see there are quite a few downloads, and I decided it would be a good idea if I would explain the whole functionality and what you can do with it. Yeah, so I hope you enjoyed this video, and yeah, I don't know, have fun, create amazing things.